was invented to other native speakers, which is bizarre. Native speakers are the base. They're the center of the universe. They're not on the exterior. A person who is a native speaker would never understand that word. They don't know what that means. You have to explain it to them. Oh, it means native speaker in English, which is completely bonkers. It's completely upside down to what we're trying to do here. But no word was created for second language speaker. So it was a second language speaker who created that word for a native speaker, but didn't create one for themselves because they don't consider themselves the other. I am the base. I am the center of my universe. There is no reason to create a word for myself. I only point at others and create words for others. Everyone is a native speaker. No matter where you are in this earth, you are a native speaker. The question is, what are you a native speaker of? For so many people around the world, there is only one language in the family. So whatever language the caregiver uses with a baby growing up, that is that baby's first language. And it can be a situation where there can be two languages. You don't know that you are a native speaker of two languages until you reach a certain maturity when your brain is developing and you start to realize how things are separate in the world. Then you start to realize that this language that I'm getting and I'm using now start to see that there are differences between the two.
Yeah, so when I have workshops and I'm teaching people about the differences between native speakers and second language speakers, I often have people say, I know native speakers. They go to this immersion school or that immersion school. Are there differences between a native speaker, an immersion school student, and maybe second language speakers? Would you group them in one category or the other, or are they something different?
We're at a point in modern Hawaii society today where it's a mess. It's a big blurry mess. It's getting harder and harder to distinguish native speaker. You have to do the air quotes kind of a thing. Except when we talk about the Niihau community, Niihau language, Niihau speakers, there is no air quotes. That's straight up, no questions asked, native speaker. Unbroken chain from Hauula till today. And then today, since you got people who acquired the Hawaiian language through classroom setting, book study, not from a parent, not from a grandparent, not from living in a household full of people who are native speakers like Niihau, not from a community where the neighbors and others are native speakers like the Niihau community. That is a very clear distinction between a Hawaiian speaker who came to pick it up later in life. They became the teacher at that school where this kid that you're asking about attends. It's not about the child, it's about the child's caregiver. So if you have teachers at the school who can't really speak Hawaiian well, don't speak Hawaiian like native speakers do, don't think in Hawaiian because they can't. How can they if they don't have people around them, fellow speakers who are native speakers? If you're creating this on your own or from a classroom setting where the teacher also learned it the same way you learned it, from a classroom setting, from a book setting, not from a home, not from native speakers, then already we're talking about another version of Hawaiian that stems from something other than intergenerational, not from the parent, not from grandparent, not from neighbors, not from community. Little to no association with native speakers on a daily basis, regular contact basis, all subject matters, even for fighting, even for celebrating, even for good times and bad in your everyday life, just in the language. That isn't the normal experience of people who acquire language through school setting. Then they become teachers of this school for this kid that you're asking about. So it is true that that kid acquires the language only once they start going to that classroom, not at home. At home, everything is English and Pidgin, occasional Hawaiian words, which is normal for Hawaii. Is that a native speaker? That's a big question. So that's a gray area in linguistics that I'm sure linguists have looked at or should be looking at, especially with regards to the Hawaiian language. So I hope that serious linguists will take that job on to describe that.
Can you just tell me what the spear is doing?
Ke ia he ihe, ke ia he makana ke ia na ko upo e holoha mai ka aina nuuhiwa mai. Nā laku I kālai hawi ia au he makana no ka mea ua hele mei lako I Hawaii nei kōkua u ia lako. Ale ho'onani nani wale no no ka mea me ke la ale maupopi o pehea la hana koi ua nono o ke ia paia. Kaulai o ke ia pale manei nei. A leila ua manao no o he ui no ke o ho'o lewa me ke ini me ke ia kaula. Ke I kaula he aho aho mākui, ka mākui, o ke ka mākui. Ho'o lewa o ke ia ihe me ke nā ua ke noho I ka pakahi kona waiho ana, hio noho I me ke la.
For me, a second language speaker, for sure. My first language is English. I acquired Hawaiian language as an adult. Obviously for me, you know me, I listen a lot to those recordings of native speakers. I have some native speaker friends from Niihau. I think you're a pretty good source as well. My kids, when I talk to my students, it's hard for me to categorize them. That's partially why I ask. All we speak is Hawaiian to them. All that we, as much as we know, and what we're acquiring either from native speakers through a recording, a video, or a living one. But my wife and I are not native speakers. By definition, they are, but I don't see them as native speakers as my kupuna would have been maybe 3-4 generations back because of that lack of community of being immersed and having that part of their everyday life with no unbroken line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But your kids are still in diapers and still at that super young age. I think cognitive sciences, linguistics, would easily classify them first language learners of your language, whatever that's why I was saying earlier, you can't, it's not about the kid, it's about the caregiver. It's about the person transmitting the language. And it could be messed up Hawaiian, which I have come across many people whose Hawaiian is barely average as far as comprehension is concerned, cultural competency, cognition is concerned, grammatically, any kind. If that part is messed up, that's what they're getting. So if you're going to ask me, are they native speakers? Everybody's a native speaker. A native speaker of what? Well, native speaker of that, whatever that is. I know that the vast majority of classroom settings across Hawaii, the teaching that occurs is obsessed with grammar. They think grammar is it. And Kalei Ha'aheo has a ridiculous, in my point of view, position where it thinks that language is just a flower lay of grammar patterns. That's a ridiculous position to take about language. There is every kind of competency involved. There is cultural competency, which you get from your intergenerational connections and your societal connections in your neighborhood, across society. That's where your culture comes from, and primarily from within the home. Attached to cultural competency, nuance language. How do you tease somebody without them knowing that they just got teased? When you do such a thing, who's gonna laugh? Who's gonna catch the joke? When Niihau, they're very good at nuance. They love teasing, and everybody gets the joke. So you can be as slight or sarcastic as you want. Everybody will get it. For someone who comes from just in this artificial outside setting, non-intergenerational setting, you invent culture where there is no culture. So you invent stuff and then you hope people will get it. And then from there on, it becomes a new kind of joke. It's not a traditional joke. You invented something. So with whatever competency you have in the Hawaiian language, you can be really good at grammar and have zero sense of nuance, no sense of humor, no real sarcasm, because sarcasm is based on shared culture. So I take something that is shared culture. We can tease about a celebrity because that celebrity presents as a comedian. So I call you that celebrity, everybody gets the joke, everybody laughs. That's an example. But in a Hawaiian setting, the jokes are different. If you were not brought up in that intergenerational continuation of the language, then you're inventing something new. Is that wrong? Of course it's not wrong. I perfectly understand why we're here, why we're going through this, why people don't speak Hawaiian, and why people are trying to grab it. So it's not a moral question, but it is a realistic question.
Do you have an example of some nuanced jokes that you've been privy to?
My grandma used to make reference to poi a lot. There's a lot of jokes to be made around poi. Not because it's poi, but because of what it means. So when somebody, like me right now, stuttering and stammering, that's lumpy poi. Pupu ka poi. And when somebody's just eloquent, just rolls off the tongue, always has a one-liner, always ready to go, either funny or wise or clever or something like that. Vali ka pui. Ai loa ka pui. When you tease somebody who can't get it right, Niihau people will, just like my grandma, because they share that culture. So my grandma's example of pui is shared across native speakers. Niihau, same. They do the same teasing like my grandma did, and my grandma is from Hawaii, not Niihau. For native speakers, it's a common cultural reference to use pui as an example of somebody who has a good tongue. A sharp tongue, good tongue, funny. Even Niihau people will tease somebody for stammering and stuttering and getting it wrong, and then question their pui. And they'll look at each other and say, "Nawa naki pui." Nawa yo owali. It's like, who made this pui? It's like, this guy's a clown. And that's a reference that only people who are in the culture will get. That's an inside joke.
What about you got plenty lei over there?
Ai, mahalo. Nui loa ka Hauuli. Ke ia po e lei no Tahiti mai. Tahiti me nā aina tua motu mā mai no. No ka mea nui ko hele ana I ke la aina a kaino aho I mei. Ke la lāku nei, ke ia ka lei hou I loa mai. He pupu ke ia no ke one kakai o tua motu. Nā mokupuni o tua motu. A me ka lei mai le no hao I nei no. Ke ia ua hoi wau I hilo ka meramana. Lei ia wau malila.
When you say, like, I don't know, in English you can say, like, oh, like, you draping the lei over like that, on top of that.
Kaulai. Kaulai o ke ia po e lei I luna ke I laau. Ke I lau no Kekaha, he laau, ka laau no ke ia no ka hula. Ua hula no o me ke I ka laau ma ke kahua ka meramana. Mo maka I ki aku nei.
Mahamua,
Ai.
Okay.
He aho no, e liki no me ke I nei. Suji, ya? Ke aho ea. Oia no ka lopi kui ia I ke ia po e pupu.
I have come across a couple of different articles in the Hawaiian language newspapers doing research of examples of Hawaiian language and the prediction that people in the 1860s had of the Hawaiian language, realizing that in the 1860s, you could say, my impression, reading across a lot of material from the newspapers and outside of the newspapers in Hawaiian, I got the impression that people across Hawaii were feeling pretty good about themselves as a country, as an influential nation, independent, sovereign nation in the world, as a global player. And they were projecting into the future. And so I came across an article that was very interesting because at the time there were Protestant Hawaiian missionaries in Marquesas, and the articles were talking about how they were sending back reports talking about how they would conduct themselves in Hawaiian, and the locals there in Marquesas were picking up on Hawaiian. I speak Marquesan, and so I know what things are so similar between the two. And so I get a big kick out of that. And so, of course, I latched on to these articles. What was interesting was the reports where they were feeling pretty good about themselves as Hawaiians living in a foreign land, projecting Hawaiian onto the locals over there, and predicting that in the future, wondering to themselves out loud, wouldn't it be nice that one day these people lose their language and pick up Hawaiian as olelo kuakahi, first language speaker, as their olelo kuakahi? This would be great even for po'e olelo kualua, for people who are second language speakers. And I loved it because I got it. As soon as I read it, I understood what they were saying. You're talking about first language speakers here and second language speakers. Kuakahi, kualua, kuakolu. You can go on and on. Manaleo is a word that's created in a vacuum that has only one meaning. You can't tack on to that. Kuakahi, you can. Kualua, kuakolu, kuaha. And that's exactly the Maori word. Tuatahi, tuarua, tuaturu. That's how they describe first language speaker, second language speaker. It makes sense. Guess what? I speak Tahitian too. Tahitian. Tuatahi, tuarua, tuatoru. There already was a existing concept. This is the 1860s. So creating manaleo is redundant and not necessary and unintelligible to any native speaker. And no word was created for the second language speaker person who created that word. So to me, it's kind of a diss to our kupuna. It's disrespectful, if you ask me.
So just to clarify, your recommendation is to use olelo kuakai.
Po'e olelo kua kahi, kua lua. It's logical. It's mathematical. In fact, it's it's straightforward. It's not a mystery. Even a native speaker would understand.
What if I was to say in Hawaiian, like, oh, you get all of these things resting or laying on top of this
Ukana, he
shelf?
mo ukana ke la. Nui ke ia ukana, weiho no me ke la.
Waiho.
Weiho no I luna ke ia haka. Kau ia. Ke I poe ukana I luna ke ia haka.
So when you say kau versus viho, yeah, viho is just...
Nā mea e lua no, hiki no ia oe mea au. No ka mea ua, ki i ukana man inei, e ukana e makana no I ke ia na ke kei holoha I haui me iau. A ka mei no oia ki ano hana ka lailai. Haui mei oia ki ia mea hapa nei ua mamake no oia iau nau no o pau. Mamake oia e ao mei iau ka hana ana ka lailai ia miu loa pauloa pau ka hana ale ua wiho no o mao. Ua kau ia mao me ke la.
Next word, I get a question. Similar, I mean, anila and your experience, your knowledge base of talking about weather in Hawaiian.
The law does not ani. The law does not ani.
And for people that, because there's a lot of people that use it, but they don't know what ani mean. What does that mean?
Yeah, people need to be critical thinkers. It's easy when everyone is sheep, came from no background. I'll just give you the words, don't ask me questions. Well, they wouldn't know what questions to ask in the first place. They just accept and they're just sponges. And unless they investigate and fact check that teacher, they're not going to criticize. They're not going to be a critical thinker or even a nuance thinker.
So what does ani mean again?
The wind blows. Ani, kamakani. The la is the sun. The sun doesn't blow. It's a dumb word. It makes no sense. The la does not ani. It makes no sense. There already are existing. I was on the committee when that word was invented in the 90s. I questioned even while I was in that meeting. Now, mind you, many of our other meetings where we approve all kinds of words, I am responsible for having created a lot of the words as well, just like the rest of the people on the crew, on the committee. And I supported a lot of the words that were proposed. I also fought against many of the words that were proposed. In this case, anila, my argument was, weather is not new. It wasn't invented in the 1990s. Weather has always been here. Here's the problem, is the committee members wanted to create categories that exist in English. Weather is a category. In Hawaiian, there's no category. If it's a windy day, nui ka makani. That's your weather report for today. Nui pehe ka makani, nui. Pehe ke ia la ia oi on the telephone, yeah? I'm on one side, you're on the other side. We're both Hawaiian speakers talking to each other. Pehe maku au au is the question. And more times than not, the receiver understands what you meant. Nana umali ke ila. Ko au au pehe? Ke ia ua. Nui ka makani. It's a Kauai expression to go pehe ka makani, pehe ka makani, yaoi, to you, asking you, what's the news? Not just news. What's the wind telling you? Pehe ka makani. And when you say it like that, especially with you raise your eyebrow, you got a slight smile. The meaning of that phrase, pehe ka makani, is like, what's up? What's the news? What's the happenings? And you would understand. So weather is a category. Even the word category was invented in the 1990s by the committee. Even the word category, well, it depends on what you mean by category. What category do you mean when you say category? So this word, wai ano, I remember the word, is in Mamaka Kaiau, was created, invented in our committee meeting with me there. It's one of those terms like anila that for me, mind you, I was an undergrad student. And I was asked to be a member of this committee. I was still just this young guy. My only other experience prior to that was being either with my grandma, people of my grandma's age who are native speakers, home Kauai, was my only experience. And then now I'm a member of this committee. In situations like that, I would just go, like, it was difficult for me because often I would think to myself, would I ever use this word with my grandma? No, the answer is immediately no. I would never say wai ano anila manaleo to my grandma. It's nonsense. It makes no sense at all. What happened there was the invention of a new language. So now you just created by default 2 languages. So there is no such thing as just the one language anymore. Now you by committee of English speakers, just like the ABCFM, the missionary committee back in the 1820s, people who are not Hawaiian speakers creating a committee, making a vote, creating new words, creating new alphabet, was repeated just again in the 1990s here. And so for all of the complaining people do about missionaries, we just repeated what they did. So we repeated what we complain about. So no, I mean, just the ridiculousness. So we should be critical thinkers.
I mean, there's a list of these. Okay, so you get 2 ones. I'm gonna start with kiko'i. How can you use specificity in Hawaiian? Because when I talk to people and they say
Ke la mea
kiko'i,
no. Ke la mea no. That's the thing I'm talking about. Ka mea ua mōkaka ka umea e wala au nei. That's specifically what I mean. Ua mōkaka ka umea e wala au nei. Ke la mea hoi au e wala au ku nei. There's all kinds of ways to talk about that thing that I was specifying. Ke la mea kuikuhi ia. Ke la mea ho'akaka ia. There's all kinds of ways. There isn't only one way. So this is another category. I want one way that's quick and easy, fast and dirty, that matches English. That means that you're thinking in English. You're not thinking in Hawaiian. And so again, you're inventing new stuff that was never meant to be. Not in Hawaiian. What it turns out to be is you just invented a new language. And it ain't Hawaiian.
so instead of thinking what is the Hawaiian word for specific,
No, there
and
is
creating
no Hawaiian word for specific. How does a native Hawaiian speaker think when it comes time to specify, not the word specific, but to specify, clarify, reiterate what's being talked about, the discourse? You know, it's discursive language. It's language that points at very particular things. Hawaiian is even more specific than English. English, there's just brother. There's no kaiku anna keikaina. Hawaiian is more specific than English. English wants to genericize everything. Well, weather. Hawaiians don't, Polynesians, Tahitians, Maori don't look at the weather and think of it as one big thing, because each element of the weather has its own spirit, has its own mana. Makani has its own, ua has its own. They all have character of their own. So you don't consider them all this one generic thing. English does that.
well, another word that I hear often used with kiko'i is la'ana. So they say, give me a specific example. They'll say, well, like you just gave, right? I asked you about how do you get specific in Hawaiian, and you gave me examples of ways to be specific in your speech. It wasn't a word, but it was several different expressions you gave. So that's another one that is always used with the word.
What's common about every single thing that you have so far said today is the common thread that runs through each of those terms, and even this one over here, is English thinking. I want something that matches English because I think in English. So let's invent specific, let's invent example, let's invent weather to satisfy my craving for English. And then I can pretend that I'm speaking Hawaiian, but no Hawaiian speaker would actually understand that. So if I write a paragraph of nothing but these terms, create a narrative, one paragraph, hand it to a native speaker, they will hand it back to me and shake their head and say, I don't know what this is. But you hand it to an immersion school person, oh yes, we talk like this all the time. Yeah, sure. If there is a test of how to know whether there in fact are 2 languages out there like I contend, that's your test right there. It's scientific, it's mathematical. I'm not talking just to talk. Ai. O ia. Ke ia ko'u tutu o ani kauhane ke la o e mama ko mama ani kauhane o e ka me nana I lawe hana I ia ue ko o pipiu ana I Hauula I Hauula kona wahi ino Hawaii ke ia ko tutu Alice na make loa o ia ke la mao Hawaiian Music Hall of Fame hakumele no o ia akamei no ia I ka hana hakumele ko tutu Alice no ko wa lili noho like no mako I kahana ke awawa o kahana
I o, Kahana Valley, noho like no māku malila, ko walili I ana no. Oia no, tutu Alice na makelua. Ho mapopo no o I
I don't know if this is the right question, but these words have been created because certain people felt that there was a lack in the Hawaiian language and we needed these words. Obviously, many of them, most of them, or all of them have been patterned after English. But some people might argue, what's wrong with that? So what? This is how we talk now. My desire when I started learning Hawaiian was the language that my grandparents, great-grandparents would have spoke. That's what I want. They didn't have these words. They weren't thinking this way. So when I encountered them, I immediately rejected them. And I had already learned another language, so that's a whole nother story. So I understood what it was like to learn a language. And I, as a second language speaker, someone outside of that culture doesn't create words and push it on that community. But I learned from them and I pattern after them. So when I encountered these words, I rejected them. People may not feel the same way. They may have been using them for a decade, 2 decades. They're comfortable with it. Yeah, what are your thoughts about that? What do we do?
Well, I said earlier, this isn't a moral question. It's a question of this is the result of our history. Someone who wants to mock me for thinking like you, that my obligation is to my kupuna, by your mocking, you are trying to establish a power differential. You want to take the politically powerful position relative to people like me, like you, who think this way. If you're going to become entrenched in that political position, then you're meaningless to me because there's no point in talking to you. So now we have to duke it out at the legislature. There's no point in me talking to you because you've already decided to mock our kupuna with your invented language that makes no sense at all to native speakers. And what's done is done. It's already there. It's already got legs. It's already going. And it comes out of a place of ignorance. It comes out of a place of ignorance and a desire to stay ignorant. And the people who invented these words should have known better, and shame on them.
When I make a mistake as a teacher, I will tell them, sorry, I was wrong.
Yeah,
My
well,
thought was this before. I've gotten new evidence and new material from legitimate sources. So, X that out. We don't do that anymore.
yeah, that's a conscious decision that people have to make along the way. So I have people who do come from the classroom setting, come to me later, say, what should I be saying? And another example, exactly this scenario happened just last week. And somebody came to me, Keao, what should I be saying? I hear you saying like this, and I'm aware that, but I'm learning, I want to learn, and in their own words, right. So I say, I don't know about you, but I'm going to carry on. I'm not looking for followers. I'm not looking for disciples. I'm not your guru, but I will carry on because this is my experience. I come from a kupuna setting, native speaker setting, even though I'm a second language speaker, but they're my influence. I'm trying to look through their eyes. That's the language I went to. It's considered mahaoi, rude, to go to Japan and change their language. Why would you do that? That's insulting. If you're going to choose to insult our kupuna this way, that's your choice, and I'm just going to carry on about my business. When people who have a sincere desire to actually want to take on the language of our kupuna after having been taught anila, la'ana, other ridiculous words like that, then that's your conscious decision that you're making right now, that you're going to suddenly turn. I do have friends who have made those decisions. I can't make that decision for you. You're going to have to make it yourself. Mahalo ke akua if you do make that decision. Consider yourself bilingual, trilingual at that point, because it depends on where your heart is. That's a political choice. I'm not going to make it for anyone else.
Ke ia o Dr. James NeSmith. O ia ka mea nana I hana I kela hana paani kini popo hinai. O ia he kupuna anakala kela no. Ke ia ko kupuna kane haule. Ka papa ko papa me ko kupuna hine no hoi. Makaau NeSmith kena. And then ke ia ko mo kupuna na makua ko mama. O ia ke ia o tutu Annie ka ohane ko kupuna kane ke ia o Sam ka ohane Oia, ko makuhine ke ia, ko mama no, ko tita. Ko keikuahine ke ia, o pinki kona inoa. Ki'i, o e ka ki'i o ke ali'i nui o Kauai o Kaumuali'i. Kaumuali'i. He kupuna kua ono o ia, no'u. He kupuna kua hā ke ia no ko'u kupuna kane o Kaumuali'i. O wau mila ka mea I ku no ka poe hana ki ki'i, mea nana e hanai ki iki. Aloha no, ko tutu eni no ke la, a me kona mama o ko tutu kua kahi ke ia o ka peka, kona inoa, kalia, kakalia no ka u. O wau noho I me ko anake ka ke keina o ko mama. O ia ke la e te hau nani.
Because I hear a lot of people, I say like goodbye to them, yeah? And I'll say like, oi, aloha no ka awa, or ke aloha no, if they believe, then I go, na ke kuho po me kea oi me ka ohan. And then some of them will respond, po mali.
I would say kia ora.
What you?
That's the original po Māori is Maori language, so I would just say kia ora.
But you haven't found that amongst any Hawaiian native speakers.
It doesn't exist. No, it's invented language.
I'm
Borrowed from Maori.
I'm not even sure what it's intended to mean.
Mali e ke ia po. Hau oli laha nau, mele kaliki maka, po mali e.
It's just a kind of a statement. For me, there's no
Ale he
expression
Hawaii.
of departure or
Ke loha
goodwill
no,
to you or
ke kopo.
Yeah.
But another one too, coming from English, stepping into Hawaiian, so many people do malama pono. Native speaker to native speaker, nobody ends a conversation saying malama pono either. Malama pono, when you say that to a native speaker, they take it serious. You go, oh, malama pono. They're going to go, yeah, what? What I got to watch out for? Is something coming for me? Is there something dangerous over here? What is this malama pono for?
Well, you haven't specified what you got a malam.
Yeah.
So
it's a strange thing. So even though malama pono is two Hawaiian words, that's an English expression. It's a local Hawaii English expression. It is not native speaker to native speaker, Hawaiian native speaker conversation. There's no example of that. You don't tell each other malama pono. You say that native speaker to second language speaker, new speaker, trying to learn, trying to grasp at straws, trying to I gotta practice my Hawaiian. I can. Okay, let's practice our Hawaiian now. Okay, we pau malama pono. And in that scenario, a native speaker will follow the lead of this person trying to learn, and they'll go malama pono. It's not like a native speaker has never heard English speakers in Hawaii say malama pono to each other. They are aware that it is said, but a native speaker to a native speaker in a conversation, niihau to niihau, my grandma to niihau, no one would ever end the conversation by saying malama pono either.
Can you give like a few examples off the top of your head of how they would end the conversation? What do they say?
Ke aloha no, aloha, aloha no ka ua, hui hou no ka ua, ke kopu. To end the conversation, they call it a denouement. To end the conversation, when you come to ending of a story, come to ending of an encounter, getting together with somebody, you actually say, oh yeah, pau ke ia, we're done. Pau ke ia, mahalo e, oh yeah, hui hoku no, aloha. Ke aloha no. You actually say lawa ke ia. We're done. Pau ke ia. Mahalo e. Pau ke ia hui ana. Mahalo e. You know those cues? You're like in English when at the end of a conversation you go, well, all right then. Yeah, that's how you're indicating that you want to bring this get together to an end. Same thing happens in almost every language. Hawaiian, you go, oh yeah, mahalo, lawa ke ia e. And then you end with your sign off. Ke aloha no, aloha. Ahui hou. No.
I failed to do this one, but have a good day. Ila meikai. Yeah, oi. Native speakers.
You just made my day worse than it was before you said ila meikai.
It kills me to say it, but I'm just bringing it up because I know a lot of people use it. I have students, well, some of them are new. They've learned in other institutions, so they meet me, and then I give them the whole spiel. But Native
Nah.
speaker to native speaker, this is not an
Never
expression.
would never
I've
happen.
never heard it myself.
Has never happened. Will never happen.
So all the expressions you just gave, in place of pomari, in place of ila meikai, and so on,
Ala no,
there's
kilo
a
no.
vast amount of expressions used. And I think part of the problem is people think, oh, not enough. We need more.
You thinking in English? Stick to English. Go have your English. When if your true desire is to pick up Hawaiian, then follow the Hawaiian lead. Follow the native speaker lead. No, invent your own. But I understand why people are inventing their own. I get it. I get it. I'm just as much here present in 2024 as you are. And I'm fully aware. Many encounters just days ago, somebody else told me ila mai kai, and in situations like that, I just go, oh yeah.
Pick your battles. Not a time to talk about it and go into it.
Yeah, but it's a battle inside my Niihau too. It's a battle. It's already doing its thing, so I have zero intention to fix it. I have zero intention to. If people want to know, I'll tell you what I feel, and I'm going to stay this way until I go with grandma. So, it even makes me think about the whole existential thing. One day I'm going to be with grandma again, and then it'll be fine. And then I get to be liberated from all this confusion. One of these days. When I'm home in Kekaha, I feel liberated already because I'm in a physical, 2-day, earthly environment where there is no ila mai ka'i. You don't end conversations with malama pono. Nobody says manaleo intentionally. There is no la'ana, there's no anila. So that world does exist for me, and that's my world to enjoy. And I'm fully aware that people like this, oh no, this is our language. I'm fully aware that yes, that is your language. So by recognizing that, we recognize two languages, not even dialects. You just invented a language of your own. I could write like I said earlier, I could write a whole narrative page of nothing but those words that only immersion school people would understand, not one native speaker would understand. And if we needed scientific proof, that's scientific proof right there. Ke ia ko tutu ani me kona mo ke keina me kona keiku nane. Ke ia ko etimomi a kahino o ia hala. A kahino o ia hala ua piha i e ho kaiha neli me e kahi makahiki. Kona hala ana. Ko lako walili i loa noho lako i puna i Hawaii. O pihi kao ma kauele au ma mao. He hale pili ko lako noho ana ko lako walili.
Can you use, or what words do you use when you close the water?
Ke ika pale.
Yeah, pale. Yeah. And how you explain close them and open them?
Pani no ka mea aiahi a hele no aiahi. No ka mea ho a i o me ki ipo e kukui I loko ka le ne hele maama a pani no I o ke ia pale me ke la. Na ko umama no I hana ke ia pale no. Nani humu a pauloa. Hana pono no hele no pauli lo I loko ka le dei. Me ke ino ke kakahiaka no ka mea puka me ino kala mao.
And then when it sits like this, so you mean you in pani, yeah? Pani, then you...
Vehe no a hamama. Pani ia no a pa'a.
That would be the same for the door, for these kind of windows, or the jealousies, yeah?
Pehea no ka mea elua no au. Elua no au no lila ke ia hana, ke ia pale ku ulima me ke ia e vehe ai I ole vehe ai hiki no ke ole no ka mea nunui ke ia pani no ka mea elua au ke manawa ne wa haalele kale nei hele ka holo tahiti me ke na pani o ke I mo pukania ni a paulua a pa'a pani no ka mea nui na pukania ni ka pela makani, pela makani no ke ia. Aka hiki no ke ole ia ke la ano ole lo pela makani no ka po in Niihau no. Ko o tutu pona ino, tutu ani, ole o ia he pe ahi uila.
ole no ia he pe ai uila. A le oia maa ke lau o lelo a pela makani e liki no ka po i Niihau. Po i Niihau pela makani wale no. O e ke kai o ke la ano wala au ana ua hai ui a oi mamua. Ko o pipio ana no ana no me tutu a ho ino i Kauai i hui me na holoha, na mo holoha o Kauai me Niihau. Hui kau wau ke kai manawa. Nui no ke la ano ka peke peke i loko u ho o puko ka o leo ia lako pe ahi uila aka mei lako ia. Hoi mai o i Oahu nei hui no me tutu ho o puko ia pela makani nana maka e mei o ia. Liu ka maka. O leo ia liu ka maka.
What's the, actually, we know or just like you get kukui, but then the thing on top of the kukui.
Ke ia?
Yeah.
Ke i ka pali.
Pali.
Ke i ka pali kukui.
Kukui, pali kukui.
But he aniani no no i ke aniani. Ole i no ke aniani. No nana no ka ua, mapopo no ka ua ke la aniani opu'u. He opu'u kona ki'i But ke ia he opu'u no Ke ia he ka opu'u.
Opu'u kukui.
Opu'u kukui. A ka ke ia pale mana i nei, hiki no ke olelo he pani, hiki no ke olelo he po'i, he pale no i he aniani no. Ka ke aniani maluna o ke ia opu'u kukui. Oia no. Pela ka pela makani. Ke kaula.
How about that?
Kaula hao. Ke kaula hao, ho'a, ho'opio.
Lo ihi mama o wahai?
Mikela no.
Mikela no.
Ko manao. Ko mana na me elua o liki
Kanana
pu.
haki pa.
Ale.
Kanana hua moku pa.
Ale. Ale. Ko manao.
In this instance, it's actually a question. I think moku is that I'm thinking if
Naha.
if it's snapped, like, yeah, if
Naha.
you pull them and
Naha. Oh, ale.
You pull them and then
Mikela wale no. Ko manao Ko manao. No ko me home no kina. Ale. Ai mau pupi.
Oh.
Ale. Wo miki no. Mikela no ko me lo ihi Lo ihi wo ale pilkia. Ale o lili mi ko ututu.
puka pa kako iwa.
Oh yeah.
Hiki. Students that are learning, they're excited to learn. I mean, you've learned several languages yourself. It's something you enjoy, I'm assuming. I feel like a lot of people I'm around, they attempt to translate idioms. They don't know their idioms or other expressions that only exist in English or maybe in their language, whatever it may be. So what is your suggestion when it comes to, I'll give you some examples. This guy is on it, or, well, he's off his rocker, or maybe stop cutting corners, right? These expressions that exist in English that English speakers will get. I find a lot of learners, including myself, maybe in the early days, trying to say these things through the use of the language, Hawaiian language. What do you do in that case? If you can't figure out how to express one of these expressions, what do you do?
I translate books like The Hobbit and Alice in Wonderland and The Chronicles of Narnia and have a laugh at trying to equate the similar scenario to a Hawaiian scenario. To me, it's a fun mental tease to do that kind of work for this kind of reason. But again, I consider myself lucky that I come from where I come from, that the people who are in my life are in my life, and stuff like that. For Niihau, you and I are talking about, and then we're cutting out talking about somebody we know. You know how some people they just make any kind pidgin, we say. Oh, okay, just make any kind, And make any kind is an expression that can mean a lot of different things. Usually something maybe not bright, not smart, maybe a little off, or mistake, or accident, or slip of the tongue, or somebody intentionally does something just to throw other people off like that. In Niihau, a scenario like that, I'm not. So these are quick, easy quips that Niihau use that convey these sort of meanings. What was the example that you gave earlier? Oh, this guy is on it. I'm now. So I'm now can be used in positive direction or negative direction. In either case, it's a nuance. It's sarcasm. Niihau are excellent at nuance. Excellent at nuance. They've been doing it for a generation since Haloa's time. So a lot of these quick expressions are for them second nature. It slides right off their tongue. So you want to know what they are, you gotta go associate. Otherwise, I'm aware there is no other Niihau community anywhere else. So resorting to inventing stuff, inventing expressions is inevitable.
From my experience, I mean, when I talk to people about recordings we have of native speakers, and when they get on phone calls and they go back and forth, or with Clinton Ganahele, it's 2 of them or 3 of them at the same time. When I finally did meet some from the Niihau community, it was far easier for me to grasp that than when I've seen others who've learned from, different ways. I often tell students, waste your life away in just listening to those recordings, because some of the nuances are left in there, not all of them. Impossible to get everything recorded, but people that aren't going to be fortunate enough to sit in that community of Niihau, that's an option I give them for the time being.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, fortunately for us today, we got Instagram and stuff like that. So you got some people from Niihau who are getting on it. Hi'ipoi, you get Kanahele, Lucky, and them. These are all people that I've known since I was a kid growing up. But I'm happy to see them on social media being Niihau. It bums me out to see them sometimes make use of these newly invented words. But I guarantee you, when they turn to their own family, their own Niihau cousins, friends, they will never use it. They only used it to project out to the outer world and the second language speakers, the learners out there, using their language. So if anything, that demonstrates how clever they are, that they know the difference. So I just said anila, anyone, wink wink, because I know that's for you guys. It's not our word, it's your word. And even if you ever hear them say mana leo, if you ever hear them say ila maikai, it's them being sarcastic to the rest of the world and the camera, speaking to all of these learners away from their community. It doesn't mean that that's how they talk. They're kind of playing with you guys' language.
Oh, lucky no, ali ravi Kekaha ka poe makai.
Ale, hapulu hol ekolu pono e nana. Hapulu hol ekolu. Wa hol ekolu ke imnao
Oh, heri ana no mamu.
Ai.
Okay.
Aka ke ia ala nui piha i Kekaha. Nui ka wawa hana kuli au e no ka i no me i ki o ke la hale mao e ka hale kina ia hi mao. Ke la kalaka halikina hi no ke ala ke iwahi nui ka ulia ka nui ka poe mai nui ka poe heleki wawa no i ke ia kalaka hana kina hi
Mai ka halikina ia?
Ke ia ke ala ke ia hale nei me ke la kaupuku i ke oe and ke kai manawa ke ia huina ala nui manei nei ke ia huina ala nui ke kai manao loa ka ulia ka ai nao mina ke ia noho ana ke ia kauna ke ia kauna piha ia ke ka piha no i ka hana kuli nui loa aka mahalo au no ka mea ke ia haliku ai he wahi haliku ai no ke ia maoloa he haliku ai ma ke la kihi mao haliku ai ua loa ke kai wahine malila hana no malila hana helukala no ia kanahana ai ke ia lua hine he Hawaii oia ho kai manawa ua hele o i loko lila ku ai o ke ia mea huli mai oia nana iau namo Hawaii mai oia kana olelo muolo ia ole mai oia non iau no oe me kela non iau no pu iau no kawo aka ua malama no wau ia uiho ali ho pu iau mali ia pane ho ko ye o ali no kawo ino mana o he ni hau oe pu iwa mabe mai ke lama nawa wala hawa ino mau aka o paukan hana ke imnao
Ika ke wewe mai mako no ka kia kani mako e rohe ni kia kani aka ko e rohe ni
ai nakulu nui loa ka nakulu ke ia ka ohua like no mikela ke holholo ala ai nui no i ka hanakuli ke ia po e ka
nakulu
ana nakulu no i nakolokolo
ko me kai po e ho pukala ko
wawa ino mao mane aka ke ia ale he
i mua no i o ka
nakulu no i ka holo ke ia mikini ke mikini ke lai wawa mali no wawa poha ke kani poha loa ke kani
Pea ke ano kia mo hale. Because you get, I guess, how would you talk about, you get hale noho kanaka, you get hale ki neiahi.
Hale ki nei ahi.
What other kind kind hale
Ke
you get?
ia he hale pāku'i hale ku'i. Ke ia. Ke ena hale no. Like no me ko hale nei he ke ena hale no. He hale ke ena hale. Nā mau hale I loko he ke ena hale no. Ai, loa ka hale holo I lole ma'o. Ke kai manawa poloke noho I ka umikini I loko nei pono no e ihu I lalo hele no ka hale holo I lole.
Pea ke hale I mua pono o ka awa, ale noho ia kia mana?
Ale weho ia ka hale, haalele ia, pani ia nā pukania ni a pauloa paa I ka papa ka papa me ke la. Kukulu ia noho I ke ia pā uea. Mahope mai no ka mea ua loa no ka poe auana ale hale ua hele no lako malila maha oi oi ka kumu ua hoi mai no ka haku hale kukulu ia ke ia pā uea
Mamo ahe pā?
ale pā
Ke makahiki no pā?
ale mo makahiki aku nei no weho ia me ke la ia la makahiki ke ia mamo ka COVID
Makana na aku pā hou no ke la.
Ai no ka mea o nuku ia ke la ona hale mamua o ale mehemela ale oi I nā nau iho no e ka poe hele auana hele no malila no lila ua hele mai no oia ke kai la no ka mea o nuku ia oia ka poe makai ua hoi mai oia hana oia me ke la mina ke la mamua nei o ka makiki in ke la he hale aina no hale paina ke I manao huli ana he LNL LNL nā wahi a pauloa ka LNL
Ono oi ke la ano mea ai?
ai ke ano e aho no ka uku ke ana ke kai po e mea ka lako moa lemi no paha he ono no ka uku ke ana e aho no mamu o lako ka sushi man me ke ino ka sushi hale mea o ki lauoho pau ke ia ho ia nau malila o ki I lauoho
Ua roi.
I'm now aliki ke ho omna nui aliki ke ho omna nui ke ia pupuka
He hakau e ka hea I ke ia ni. Alahele? Kimeki.
Ke ia alahele kimeki
Pea ke la mea lena mea mele mao.
ka paipu kina iahi paipu wai kina iahi paipu wai kina iahi
Rohe kura wau no ka Hawaii. Oia ke la?
Ka Hawaii
Hawaii ai ore kira puka. Ka he komo I ke kanaka
ke ia
ke la
ke ia ka lua ale he lua no ale mau pio ka paipu mea ho kahe ino ka paipu ho kahi ino I ka paipu nunui malalo lawe ia ke la poe pela poe mea pela paipu lawe ino hiki no ke alo paipu lawe kukai ka he loa no he mono I ke kai ka kukui ho'okuka'a
What about the poles and stuff? You get one here for the sign, the wood one over there.
Pole.
For the pole no.
Pole no
Pole hao, pole la'au.
Pou hao no ke ia pou ho ailona no pou kilipona no ma'o ka mea la'au
Pole puka puka.
ai oi hoi ila no I ke ia ka ohua pono mai ni ko ututu ia o ke kai manao no kumea ho mapupu o ke kai manao no maua ma ka au ke la nui no hana ka kaliana ko mako ka po maua ka ohua e hele mai ai ka holo ana mai ua nana wo huli ko maka e nana o leko ia mai ke ka ohua ho opololei mai o ia o ale ia mai ia hao no ke ha mikela ia hana hou ia no mahope mai ke la ano olelo alila I paa pono mai ia me ke la aka ua loa no ka himeni ua ho mapupu ma ka himeni ua loa no ke la ano olelo ia mai iau o ka boe la a o laupa hoe la. E ia mai iau, e ia e ka bus. Ke holo mira me ke la, e ia e ia mai iau, e ia e oia.
I nā no holo porori mei kira ka ohu ia ka
Ke holo meila ia.
Ia mei no o.
O ia mau no e ia ke holo meila ia au. Ai ole ke holo meila I kahi o. O ia, he hale no ke la, he hale malino, a ka ke la mao o leo ia he hale iluna I lalo. He hale iluna I lalo, e lua papahele. He hale ke la iluna I lalo. Ke ia, ko mako hale nei e kolu no papahele. He hale e kolu papahele.
Lava no pa aki.
Mahalo. Mahalo ki iwi ana
Ele ana. Mau hoi ana.
O ia. Loa ka olua po I ukana I loko ka hele. Ho ino?
Hoi no. Pau hele hele aku no ai aku ki kalau.